Is back on the program. Joey, how you doing this morning?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Paul.
Yes, sir. How's Fort Smith doing?
Hey, Fort Smith's doing good. You know, we're still trying to shine the bright spotlight on what our government's doing down here. You know, we've one of the issues we've got still ongoing is what's happening with this special prosecutor with Jake Files, who took the $80,000 wire transfer from nursing home owner David Norsworthy. You know, that's really a lot of folks want to know when David Norsworthy and Jake Files are going to be prosecuted for that, because it sure looks like a quid pro quo.
You know, it really does. And isn't Jake Files already serving? He began serving his 18th month sentence.
He is, and you know, he of course was involved in stealing General Improvement Fund money, like we had up north. So the question is, you know, it's the same thing with Michael Maggio down in Conway. You know, he takes a bribe from David Norsworthy's partner, Michael Morton, and Michael Morton skates, you know, for basically undoing a jury award. And same thing here. After tort reform was filed in 2015, Norsworthy clearly sends a secret $80,000 wire transfer, and guess what? He still hasn't been prosecuted. It's a pretty simple matter.
Yeah, and it's blatant as well, and so you gotta wonder. First, you gotta wonder. You know, has Norsworthy talked to the FBI? You know, I would certainly you know, want to know that. I mean, who knows? Does he have information that might be useful in other cases? You know, there's a lot of moving parts here that we can't really see.
Yeah, there really are, and you look at issue one, and I mean, if we ask your listeners who before the 2017 session contacted their legislature and said, hey, we want to put a price tag on the most vulnerable among us, you know, stay-at-home moms, children, unborn life, or elderly, I wonder how many would say, yeah, you know, I contacted my legislator and said that was my top priority. I wonder how many of the listeners out there contacted our legislator and said, hey, let's give the most political body, the legislature, control over the rules of the court, so that we can violate our separation of powers. I mean, no, I think we all know that it's special interests like the nursing home owners who are using carefully crafted words. You know, I thought that was an interesting subject this morning. I saw where Randy Zook came out in the newspaper the other day and said, oh, issue one preserves the right to trial by jury. So we're going to set a limit on brain damage, quadriplegia, and death, that juries can listen to the facts and decide, and we're going to call that preserving our right to trial by jury. Well, I would ask, what about Article 2, Section 7 that says the right to trial by jury shall remain inviolate? Or Article 2, Section 13, which says that folks who are injured should obtain justice completely? I don't know what special interest, where they're getting their definitions, but I'm not sure Arkansans agree.
You know, it's really sad that Randy Zook would say something. I've been disheartened with the ability of the other side to essentially, you know, project the very thing that they are guilty of, you know, onto, you know, the other side. Or you know, they're telegraphing what they're guilty of when they say with their defenses, you know, if you vote for issue one, it'll end special interest or it'll curb special interest, and they do this completely ignoring that if it wasn't for nursing homes, this bill would not be written the way it's been written.
Yeah, and if, you know, didn't they tell us the same thing back in 2014 when they, on issue 3, which they kept selling us that, oh, this is going to ban lobbyist gifts to state officials. This is going to ban corporate contributions to candidates. And then what did we get? We got an increase in term limits and an increase in legislator pay. So we need to be very careful about the bait and switch here. You know, they keep on throwing out this jobs business. Well, Randy Zook himself said, we have plenty of jobs, we just don't have a trained workforce. I mean, we've got the lowest unemployment rate in state history. Why don't we lower taxes? Why don't we train our workforce? Why don't we improve education in the state of Arkansas? All conservative ideas, and we will attract jobs. Mr. Zook says that we're going to attract doctors by passing issue 1. Well, remember what Rose Mims says, who came out against Arkansas Right to Life? Jerry Cox. Well, what kind of doctors are we going to attract by limiting accountability if they kill or maim someone? Well, we're going to attract bad abortion doctors. We're going to attract bad doctors from other states who are booted from their state. We need good doctors in Arkansas, but we don't need to attract the bad ones.
I was talking to somebody the other day who was undecided on issue 1. Could kind of see the merits what he called the merits of both sides. But here's the thing, Joey. A lot of some business owners think, okay, this is going to help fight frivolous lawsuits. The truth is, there's nothing in this that would curb frivolous lawsuits, right?
Well, hey, that's right, Paul. And there's a challenge. There's a standing challenge out there that a certain person will give anybody $5,000 who could show where issue 1 in any way deals with frivolous lawsuits. And I'll one up them. I'll eat the document if they can find where issue 1 deals with frivolous lawsuits. It's not in there, Paul. They don't care about frivolous lawsuits. What they care about are meritorious lawsuits. They want to limit their exposure when someone is killed. And that's why Jerry Cox is going on a statewide tour, actually starting as we speak. He's going to be going with Jerry Cox with Family Council, for some who may not know, is going city to city talking about what's wrong with issue 1. Jerry calls it the Price on Life Amendment because it's like, as he says, it's like putting a Kelly Blue Book value on a car.
Yes.
Or an appraisal on a piece of property, and that's why conservative groups are largely against this, because it's not pro-life.
Yeah.
We as conservatives and Republican Party, we respect and value life and hold life with sanctity, and this is just not consistent with our moral values.
And I was going to say, if you take the morality out of it, you understand how easy this is for the nursing homes to write it and be in favor of it. Because if you cap these non-economic damages at $500,000, then the nursing home, they make money hand over fist. So they will have no incentive to change the behavior if they neglect an elderly person, cause their death, cause serious harm. They can now say, okay, well, we now have a knowable cost. How many of these lawsuits do we face? All right, and now we are only going to have to pay out $500,000. Fantastic. We don't have to change what we're doing. We don't have to try to provide better care where we fail. Instead, it's now part of doing business that we're just going to have to pay out $500,000 every time, one of these incidents happen. And that, again, is, if you take the morality concept out of it, you can see why they have an economic incentive to do this and advocate for it.
Sure, and let's not remember that the other driver behind this are insurance companies. Nursing homes should be carrying insurance that cover the death of our loved ones in nursing homes. We saw what happened in California. They passed tort reform back in 1976 based upon the premise that they were going to lower the premiums for doctors. Well, guess what? Over a 13-year period in California, doctors' rates went up 450%. Until 13 years later, in 1988, they passed Proposition 103. Guess what Proposition 103 was? Which stabilized doctors' insurance rates. It was insurance reform. So I think our legislature needs to start focusing on insurance reform put some regulations where insurance companies have to justify why they're increasing our good doctors' rate, why they're increasing our car rate. And if they can show that it's not through bad investments, which, by the way, that's what happened in California, they were making bad investments. The profits of insurance companies, medical malpractice insurance companies, is astronomical in Arkansas, and they're not giving any of that money back to our good drivers. And but they're paying their CEOs, $20 million a year. So let's look at insurance reform before we start taking away the rights of the people.
Yeah, I completely agree. What's going on with Arkansas and insurance companies just in general is, I think history will eventually show is one of the biggest frauds ever on the taxpayers of this state. We're talking to Joey McCutchen, Fort Smith attorney. Now, Joey, we're talking about the pitfalls of issue one and why it's not good. But I'd like to ask you about maybe another issue, specifically with the ongoing discovery that's coming out with the corruption in Arkansas politics. Going back to the general improvement funds that Jake Files stole. If you go a little bit north, you end up getting into the John Woods case, convicted felon John Woods sentenced to 18 years. That ties back to Ecclesia College. And I'm just wondering, are we ever going to find out exactly what Ecclesia College spent all that money on?
Well, as you know, we've got a lawsuit pending right now where they would not give us documents. We've also got a lawsuit to recover the $600,000 or $700,000 public dollars that they gave to this private college. Things are happening. We have set depositions of legislators because we want to get to the bottom of this. We understand conservative values and respect for our taxpayer dollars, and that money went for the wrong purpose. It was not used. Even if you get past the premise that why are a group of conservative legislators giving our taxpayer dollars to a private college in northwest Arkansas? Well, why aren't they calling for that money back that went to that institution and did not go to the purpose that they said they were going to use it for? It's time for accountability, and it's time for light. And all of this ties back to special interest, and it's really just disrespect for the taxpayer of Arkansas and disrespect for our rights. And whether it's Ecclesia or Issue 1, we've got to stand up and be accountable for tonight. Paul, just to jump back very quickly, there's a forum in Northwest Arkansas at the Northwest Arkansas Community College on Issue 1. I would encourage all folks in Northwest Arkansas to attend that. The funny thing is, or the travesty is that the other side is not showing up. I think that they see that anytime there's education about Issue 1 and its placing of a special a price tag on life, it's separation of powers issues, they know that they're not gaining ground, so they're just not showing up for forums. So anyone who doesn't understand Issue 1, I hope they'll come tonight. There'll be discussions from Chad Gallagher, who was with the Huckabee administration, Annabelle Clinton Tuck, a former justice, and Representative Jimmy Gazaway, who, by the way, stood up for our rights in the legislative session and in session said how bad and how egregious this attack on life was. And unfortunately, he wasn't listened to by the majority.
No, he wasn't. And Republican Jimmy Gazaway did a good job there. He even tried to offer an alternative that they didn't want to have anything to do with. So yeah, Joey McCutchen, I so appreciate. And the thing is, one of the reasons the other side may not be showing up to these forums is because they don't want to get in a Bob Ballinger situation, Joey, where Bob Ballinger comes out and he gets so frustrated at the crowd and he says, he tries to stand up for legislators and he ends up saying that nobody going down to Little Rock is benefiting from it, is personally benefiting from it, and then of course he got laughed off stage. So maybe people don't want to repeat that kind of behavior.
Well, we've got to be realistic about what's going on. The corruption in Arkansas from various legislators has been startling, to say the least. We've got good legislators who go to Little Rock and they do the right thing. But the bottom line is, and the important thing is that there is so much influence on our on our legislature in Little Rock. Our Constitution, our 1874 Constitution, Article 5, Section 32, said that the legislature cannot limit damages. And the reason that was passed in 1874 overwhelmingly by the voters was there was corruption. There was corruption of the legislature by railroads right after the Civil War. And how ironic would it be that in the times of probably some of the greatest corruption in the state of Arkansas, legislators and special interests are trying to undo Article 5, Section 32 of our Constitution.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
The
irony of that. And I think people are seeing through that, Paul.
Yeah.
That we can't allow the legislature, who is controlled by special interests, we can't let David Norsworthy and Michael Morton write the rules of the court. And that's who would be writing them, because they give the most money. They've given an amazing amount of money to legislators, and we've got to push back on that.
I know. Real quick, I know you've mentioned that before, but what year was that the voters 18 what that were with the railroads?
1874. That provision, Article 5, Section 32, has been in our Constitution since 1874. We followed suit after Pennsylvania was having the same problems with corrupt special interests called railroads, and they were cutting deals with the legislators. Railroad workers were getting injured, so they were writing laws that said were capping damages, and so they had to Pennsylvania had to put it in their Constitution, and Arkansas followed suit 2 years later. And now legislators and special interests are trying to bait and switch.
Yes.
Talk about trial lawyers. Greedy. We're trying to protect you from greedy trial lawyers. I mean, come on. I mean, that's just bait and switch. We don't create injuries. We just try to get folks hold corporations fairly and fully accountable, and get justice for our clients.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on, and, I'm kind of seeing a parallel here because, back in the 1870s with the railroad, I mean, they were very much in bed with the government, using government as a way to, build the railroads and things like that. The government was involved with, regulatory process, to say the least. And I see, okay, that was the biggest industry here in Arkansas at the time, pretty much. What's the biggest industry in Arkansas now? It's insurance. It's this whole health care situation, and it's the same thing.
If you look at the theme of the day, Paul, there's articles on this actually from the Arkansas Democrat. It says the theme of the day was distrust of government. I mean, that is right on point with today. But instead of trying to pass laws to prevent corruption, we're trying to erase from our Constitution a provision that held government in check and held the legislature in check. It's just like Governor Hutchinson said yesterday. The separation of powers is eroding. The legislature back in 2014 passed a constitutional amendment which gave the legislature approval power over executive department regulations. Now they want to take over control of the court.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is a dangerous proposition when the legislature is encroaching upon the executive branch and now the judicial branch.
Yeah.
We can't allow that to happen.
Yeah.
There's a reason for the checks and balances that our founders put in our Constitution.
I agree. Joey McCutchen, I appreciate it, sir.